Welcome to Critical Role Demystified. I'm Mike Christensen, and today we're doing a special bonus episode about Vox Machina's level 20 Battle Royale from the end of the campaign. This video was commissioned by one of my patrons, Syd Kilgore. When you support the channel at the Programmed Illusion level at $35 a month, you can commission me to make a bonus Demystified episode about a Critical Role one-shot. Now, some one-shots are canon, and those are episodes that I'll eventually cover in the main series, like The Search for Grog or the Darrington Brigade one-shot. But others are totally up for grabs, like Liam's one-shots, the Battle Royales, and the Stephen Colbert games, just to name a few. So, if there's something you'd like to see me review that's not part of the core narrative for these Critical Role campaigns, support me on Patreon at the Programmed Illusion level and we'll make it happen. Also, I want to give a disclaimer. The first section of this video is totally safe, but once we get into gameplay, we'll be discussing a level 20 game from the end of the campaign. This one-shot contains some spoilers for the end of Campaign 1. I mean, we're going to get lots of references to magic items or spells that the party obtained in their later adventures, but specifically, a couple of the characters' abilities and tactics are spoilers for late-game story beats of the Vox Machina campaign. Those moments won't have quite the same impact if this is the first time you're hearing about them, but I can't really avoid mentioning them when covering this episode, so be advised, spoilers ahead. And that being said, we can still learn lessons for Game Masters right at the top of the video, and there is a specific point later on where the spoilers start to kick in, so I will give you the heads up when we get there. With that out of the way, let's begin. Not every player could join for this session. Ashley was in New York, and Laura was at a video game awards show for her work in Uncharted. So as the narrative begins, our players, Vax, Keyleth, Percy, Scanlan, and Grog, drift off to sleep the night before the final fight against the final boss of the campaign. They dream that they wake up together in a strange environment, a tower with a moat around it surrounded by bunkers. This is the setting for the Battle Royale. They see a powerful figure floating above them, a hooded man with a perfectly shaped beard and well-combed hair, because he's modeled after Matt Colville. In this Battle Royale, one of his arms is covered in armor shaped like spines of metal, keeping his arm in place. Because Matt Colville had a broken arm at the time, he had pins in his arm. This is an important lesson if you're running a Battle Royale. It's really useful to have a powerful, godlike figure show up and throw the heroes together, especially if the players are playing existing characters they care about a lot. It can be really hard for them to rationalize why their characters would brutally murder each other for no reason. So, in-universe, this stranger, this beyonder, this grand master, can give the players a chance to suspend their disbelief and just have fun. This is a lesson Matt had to learn from previous Battle Royales because this is their fourth one. And it's not the only way Matt has learned from the previous games. Every Battle Royale does things better than the one before because Matt learned lessons from each Battle Royale and applied them to the next one. There are features of this map that were specifically added to address issues that came up in each of the three preceding Battle Royales. And as a result, this map is excellent. So let's take a look at that map. There's a tower in the center of the battlefield, a moat of water around it, and two towers on opposite corners that crackle with electricity. As we'll see later in the fight, these towers will regularly burst with electricity that jolts anyone who happens to be standing nearby. This is essential for a battle royale. You want things that the players can interact with. An empty arena is not a lot of fun, as Matt has learned the hard way. But you also want these elements of the map to discourage players from just hiding and waiting for everyone else to kill each other. Another lesson learned from earlier battle royales. There's also a shimmering dome of energy surrounding the map. It goes about 100 feet up. Whenever someone slams into it during the fight, they're going to take force damage and get pushed 15 feet back, away from the dome. This is an excellent addition to the map, considering a couple of characters have a lot of flying at their disposal. There really does need to be a ceiling. There are some small bunkers around the map. Those have treasure chests inside with useful goodies in them, superior healing potions. However, as the game continues, the cast will discover that some of these chests are trapped to release poisonous gas when they're opened. Each end of the map also features an identical small building, and the players soon discover that each of these contains a doorway that teleports you to the doorway in the building on the opposite end of the map, which is such a fun mechanic. They'll discover that these buildings also sometimes pulse with an anti-magic effect, neutralizing magical effects on whoever is inside the building for about a round. This also affects anything in the water, just in case anybody decides to hide in the moat, which did happen once or twice in the last Battle Royale. The central tower has braziers along the side, and sometimes those explode with flame as well. But on the top of the tower is a green aura of light. If someone is in the field at the start of their turn, they'll actually heal 20 hit points. But of course, that's the very center of the map. It's a pretty exposed place to hang out for a very long time. Again, what a great mechanic. That's really awesome. Now these effects that sometimes go off, the braziers, the anti-magic, the electricity, they all share one initiative and rotate which one takes effect, so it's never the same mechanic twice in a row. They cycle through. I believe they occur on initiative count 20, since that's when layer actions go off in more typical boss fight sessions of D&D. And on that note, even if you're not running a battle royale, you can still steal these sorts of mechanics for your own maps. I wouldn't recommend you make all of the effects this potent. These are specifically designed to even the playing field for all the players and prevent them from hiding in one spot and waiting for other characters to kill each other. Boss monster fights don't need to discourage that behavior, since heroes aren't likely to completely sit out the fight, and using all three of these layer actions would feel pretty extreme if there was also an enemy monster dealing damage to the party. But if you want to add one or two mechanics to the battlefield to help or hurt anyone who lingers there, that can have a really cool effect on a combat, since without those mechanics, it's really common for the heroes to barely move at all on their turns, just finding a place they like and taking their attacks or casting their spells. These sorts of layer actions make the party a bit more wary about camping out in the most obvious spots, and just generally encourage them to explore the space a bit more. As the game opens, Matt has the players roll dice to determine where on the board they randomly spawn, but they're pretty much all along the perimeter. Then he calls for an initiative roll, but he doesn't give the players a chance to prepare for a round, which is what he's done in the past. Which of course means that the players ask for a chance to prepare, and he eventually agrees and gives them a single action they can use to prepare. Also, Matt rules that the players don't have any of the healing potions that might be on their character sheet, which is really smart. That's an issue whenever you run a battle royale with existing characters in the middle of a campaign. After all, there are treasure chests with useful items inside for exactly this reason, to create a vaguely level playing field. Also, okay, spoilers for episode 81 of Critical Role. Click away if you don't want to learn something that happens. But in this battle royale, Grog does not have the Deck of Many Things. Even though this game theoretically takes place before their final fights, that framing device was more for the purposes of narratively explaining the presence of all of these characters. Mechanically, they're playing with the versions of the character sheets from after the campaign, with all of their final level ups in place. These are all really useful lessons if you're preparing to run your own battle royale. As I'm writing and filming this episode, I have a battle royale coming up this weekend in the Curse of Strahd game I'm running, and so I'm definitely looking at the structure of this game and the layout of this map and looking for some inspiration for that session. We drop into initiative, and I'm not going to do a blow-by-blow of every single turn. I'm just going to hit you with some of the most interesting highlights and fill them out with the relevant connective tissue. Also, I want to point something out. By this point in the campaign, Travis actually has a notebook with all of the math for his different weapons and presumably how the math is affected by his different abilities, like Great Weapon Master. I haven't seen pages from it, so I don't know how it's formatted, but if you're the kind of player who gets intimidated or flustered or frustrated trying to keep track of all of the different weapons you have at higher levels, especially when your list of weapons has gotten way too elaborate for your character sheet, which isn't really hard, there's not much room in the character sheet for weapons, then making a cheat sheet is probably a huge help. Vax is stealthing around the map, and so Liam is taking pictures of the map, marking them up, and sending them to Matt, so Matt knows where he is, but the other players don't. I personally consider this kind of an extreme tactic to avoid metagaming issues, but in fairness, the rogue's whole thing completely falls apart if they don't have stealth against their enemies. This is one way to have fun as a rogue, and if this is something he was doing during the entire campaign, it would be intolerable, but it's just for the purposes of this game, so it's not the end of the world. Keyleth casts Sunbeam and becomes an Earth Elemental, and just starts stomping around and laser blasting people like Godzilla. But then Scanlan casts Otto's Irresistible Dance on her, and she just has to boogie in place. She tries changing her wild shape to break the spell, but the spell doesn't go away when she switches forms. Likewise, she argues that maybe freedom of movement could protect her from spells that would keep her from moving, but Matt looks over the Irresistible Dance spell and decides, no, technically this magic isn't stopping her from moving. She's not locked in place, she just doesn't want to move. This is, I think, one of the most useful lessons when it comes to this episode, especially when we're talking about running a game for a level 20 party, and we're going to see a lot of examples of this throughout the episode. You gotta look to the books and really get strict with rules as written interpretations. Technically, Marisha's making an excellent argument. I can see how she got there. And when you're playing at lower levels, at least when you're running games like I do, it can be really tempting to say, well, that's a really creative idea, or that's a great argument, and decide that something will work even if it's not technically written that way. But when the players are level 20, they've got more than enough advantages. They don't need you to put your thumb on the scale and give them an edge. Now, this is obviously especially true for this episode since it's a battle royale with no DM-controlled enemies. Matt really is truly a referee. It's arguably the purest form of DMing. He set up a map, called for initiative, and made very few choices from then on. Now it's just about running a fair game. And honestly, Matt tends to default to rules as written or rules as intended far more than I do. I'm a bit more of a rule of cool DM. But I still think with a level 20 game, you gotta trust the rulings based on the rules, because your players have more than enough powers to overcome the challenges they're facing. They don't need you to take pity on them or give them a leg up to make things fair. Also, while we're on the subject of player character power levels, Keyleth can also wild shape indefinitely. She's level 20. She can change from wild shape to wild shape, and she can constantly wild shape. There are no more limits. Everything is on the board. Scanlan is pushing for everyone to converge and kill Keyleth. That's the only way they have a chance against her. But at least one person isn't on board. Percy shoots Scanlan with bad news. He's using bad news so he can be out of range of Scanlan's cutting words and most of his other abilities. And because it does a ton of damage and Scanlan doesn't have a very high AC. Percy also has a magic item that allows him to be silenced, which protects him from Scanlan's abilities as well. And here we gotta talk about some major Vox Machina spoilers. If you haven't watched through episode 86, I recommend you come back to this video later. Okay? We good? Okay. So here's the thing. As you know, because you stuck around for the spoilers, Scanlan broke the hearts of the player characters and the players late in the campaign. And when he left the group, he had one of Percy's guns. So for months, literally months of real-world time, Taliesin had this idea for how he could take down Scanlan. He would need the silence spell, so Scanlan couldn't hear him coming, and once he got within 10 feet of Scanlan, the silence would neutralize Scanlan's spellcasting, and Percy could just blast him with bad news. And Taliesin had wanted to do this to Scanlan for a long, long time now. Of course, he didn't do it during the campaign, because that's not a healthy way to resolve his issues. And while he was tempted many times, he knew better than to actually try to take out Scanlan just to retrieve his gun. But here, in a consequence-free battle royale, he can finally try out this tactic. Of course, as Percy is taking all of these shots, everyone else is starting to realize the same thing. This is not the best strategy. They need everyone to work together to take Keyleth, and that includes Scanlan. And Percy doesn't take his final shot. He withdraws. Now, the cast discussed this later on, but Travis essentially pointed out that nobody wanted to make a strategy in advance to all coordinate and gang up on Keyleth in round 1, because then it's not a battle royale, it's just a Keyleth boss battle. That's a great point, and it's perfectly valid to decide, yeah, a battle royale should just be a struggle against whoever is around, without everyone ganging up for an alliance against one player immediately. Once Scanlan did make that call, they were all too scattered across the map because of where they'd spawned and where they'd moved, and each of them had to make a judgment call about whether it was worth getting close enough to try to kill Keyleth before she broke the spell, or just to try to keep their distance for safety. Most of them opted for the latter. On the other hand, Taliesin said he was trying to urge Scanlan to attack Keyleth, but, quote, Scanlan didn't do that. He was playing it too safe. I think that sort of indicates that maybe he was imagining a specific attack, like a physical attack with Bigby's hand, because Scanlan targeted Keyleth a lot during this fight. But Taliesin also admitted, yeah, he was being kind of petty just because it was fun. Again, D&D is a game. There are no stakes to a battle royale, so honestly, just have fun. Go after whoever you want. It's fine. Okay, for this next section, I'm going to talk about a couple things that seem benign, but honestly, this includes a reference to something we learned in the final episode of the Vox Machina campaign. It's a very small reveal that made me weep like a baby, and if this is the first place you learn about it, it's just not going to have quite the same impact. So, you know, if you haven't finished the Vox Machina campaign, come back to this later. Cool? Okay, let's do it. Grog and Keyleth fight, and Scanlan casts reverse gravity on Keyleth and sends her 100 feet up into the Dome of Energy. And the way this plays out is truly awesome. I'm going to play this clip.
So, Keyleth, you suddenly go firing up into the sky. Percival, you watch as Keyleth spins up, slams into the top of the field. Whoosh! I need you to make a Constitution saving throw.
Just a straight con save?
Mm-hmm.
Not good! 7!
All right, you take 29 points of force damage.
Okay.
As you slam into the field, and then it thrusts you 15 feet away from it, and then you head back towards it.
You do the basketball.
Oh no. Oh no.
So it won't affect you this round.
Okay.
But you're currently being
just bludgeoned against this.
bludgeoned repeatedly.
Thankfully for her, she can become an air elemental and fly away, and now she's flying around the map, still blasting people with Sunbeam. Percy heals in the green aura on the tower roof and enters the tower, the top level of which is full of fog. That's weird. It's like someone who took one level of Druid cast a fog cloud spell or something. Grog tries to enter the tower from below, but gets caught in the reverse gravity, and also gets thrown up into the dome over and over. We're also at 2 hours and 18 minutes into our game, and we get our first glimpse of Vax, as a black blur rushes out from the tower.
Got it, okay.
He's scheming.
Okay, I'm good. So you know what I want to do. I did it already.
Okay.
Thrilling.
Keyleth, you're up.
Riveting.
Hey man, I worked really hard for 115 episodes. Allow me to be a fuck off.
Yeah.
Keyleth attacks Grog while he's being slammed into the ceiling, and Percy, who is still under a silence spell and therefore has no idea about most of what's happening during the fight, accidentally gets swept up in the anti-gravity and winds up walking around on the dome upside down. Full credit to Taliesin. He's very quick to point out any moment throughout this fight where he wouldn't hear something because of his silence spell, and often that winds up being a pretty big disadvantage. Scanlan ends the anti-gravity, but Percy still has spider climb boots. He's still standing on the ceiling. Grog uses an immovable rod to catch himself just before he would hit the ground, reducing his falling damage enormously, and Keyleth can fly. The players spot a fog cloud in one of the treasure chest rooms, and Keyleth fills that area with a firestorm. You know, I'm starting to worry that maybe Keyleth will be hard to beat. Of course, this is also where we see the other skill rogues have that make them dangerous in a battle royale. Keyleth drops a firestorm on him, and Scanlan hits him with a 4th level fireball, and thanks to Vax's evasion skill, he takes no damage and zips across the field again. And then, at about 3 hours into the game, including the break, which was about 15 or 20 minutes, so really we're at about 2.5 hours of gameplay, the dome begins to contract. The field grows smaller by 5 feet on all sides. There's a time limit on this battle royale. In the last battle royale, Grog was an unstoppable monster, but in this one, he spends a lot more time running around chasing people he can't get to. That's a problem he had throughout the campaign. It's a problem with high-level play that he was just never able to overcome. And it was a particular challenge in this fight. He managed to deal damage to Keyleth, once? Maybe twice? Keyleth grabs Grog and casts Plane Shift and banishes him to the elemental plane of water. This is actually something she tried to do in the last game, but he succeeded on that saving throw. So now she gets the chance to try again. She banishes him to a world where he's going to drown, the elemental plane of water. Except, before he can drown, a kraken they faced before gets to him first. Matt implies Grog is going to go out fighting, which is almost certainly what Travis would want on any other day, but in this episode, Travis basically says that Grog just gives up. Now here's the thing, Travis talked about this later on, but he had a head cold brewing and he wasn't feeling good. And he decided he was going to stick around, hang out for the rest of the game, probably so he wouldn't seem like a bad sport, but he actually felt miserable. He didn't have an awesome time running around and not hitting anybody, and then he didn't have an awesome time sitting and watching the rest of the fight for the next couple of hours. So here's a lesson, and I think it's a valuable one. If you feel like crud, it's okay to leave the table and go home. I especially think that's true for games like D&D, where dead characters don't get to do anything for the rest of the session, and especially true for battle royales, where there's really no chance of resurrection. None of your allies are going to come heal you, because they ain't your allies right now. But honestly, no matter what the circumstances of the game, you're a human being. If you don't feel good, just say so and excuse yourself. It's 1000% okay. You have my permission. Percy throws the Iron Bands of Bolaro, the magic item he calls manners, to wrap up Keyleth in metal chains. But she's got freedom of movement on her, so it doesn't work. And Taliesin also realizes he couldn't have said the command word anyway, thanks to the silence spell. But even if that wasn't the case, Keyleth basically can't be restrained. So the group narrates it as the bands wrapping her up before she effortlessly slips out of them. So here's another cool thing. Nobody asks to retcon that moment. Even in one of the most competitive versions of Critical Role, the Battle Royale, we're at the point where they've accepted that you sometimes are going to say that you do something and then realize that it's impossible for you to do that, but it's what you said you were going to do. Percy couldn't have said the word manners out loud, so he wouldn't have thrown it. But that's how it goes. Play it where it lies. As Liam often says, fog of war. As someone currently reviewing the Briarwood arc, where they're still very much finding that balance, it's so nice to see that in this situation, nobody even suggests rolling it back so Percy didn't throw manners in the first place. There are a few times in this fight where somebody changes their mind about where they go on the map based on how much movement they thought they had, but that's not nearly as big a deal as something like trying to use a magic item. Vax finally emerges from wherever he was hiding and starts going after the other players, taking skirmishing strikes and retreating. Keyleth tries to cast Feeble Mind on Scanlan, but he counterspells it. So then he uses Wish to cast Feeble Mind back at her. By the way, it's very sporting of him not to use the Wish spell to just, get rid of her wild shapes or turn her bones into napalm or something. He's playing fair. And she fails the save against Feeble Mind, so she's got an Intelligence and Charisma score of 1, and she can't cast spells. But Marisha and Matt point out, Wild Shape isn't a spell. She can still Wild Shape every turn. Now we can split hairs here on whether or not Keyleth would be intelligent enough to remember the creatures she can transform into, and I don't know, man, you can obviously make that ruling at your own table, maybe declare that she can only wild shape into an earth elemental because that's the form that she's in right now, but the spell doesn't obliterate her memory. She still remembers every creature she's interacted with and remembers the creatures she's transformed into. So, you know, killing a level 20 Circle of the Moon druid is actually really hard. At this point, the dome is contracting enough that Matt is actually removing terrain from the board as it's being destroyed. By the way, I called the green aura an exposed place to hang out for an extended time, but Percy's been up there for like 4 rounds with a sniper rifle. He's making really good use of that piece of terrain. Keyleth grabs Scanlan and tries to pull him under the water to drown him, but he teleports away. And the map is starting to constrict even faster, 2 squares every round. Keyleth becomes an earth elemental and knocks down the tower in the middle of the map. Percy hits the ground and starts shooting Scanlan a few times, knocking him unconscious. Then he closes the distance and stabs him to death. Keyleth knows exactly where Vax is thanks to her tremor sense, so she becomes a fire elemental and closes in on him, seeping through the rubble to reach him. It's legitimately terrifying. As the walls close in, all that's left is the island. The moat is gone, everything beyond it is gone. From here on, it doesn't close in all at once. Certain sides of the dome close in one at a time. Vax is trying to bring down Keyleth, but from beyond the grave, Scanlan offers some perspective.
Okay.
Can't be done.
I'm at 42
Don't
damage.
you get it? The math's not there. You have to deliver more than 200 points of damage in a single round to kill her. You can't do it without us.
All right.
The math is not there.
Okay.
Keyleth set Vax on fire with her fire elemental form like several turns ago, and he never took the time to put the fire out, so eventually the fire knocks him unconscious. Keyleth closes the distance and finishes him off. But you know what? Liam knew from the very beginning of the session that Keyleth was going to kill Vax. It was just a matter of time. Percy keeps the distance for a while, peppering her with bullets that she immediately heals from every time she uses a bonus action on every one of her turns to change forms again. But eventually Percy gets caught between the force field and some rubble, and Keyleth crushes against him, so he takes a lot of damage from the wall, and she eventually makes some Percival jelly. The dome vanishes, the members of Vox Machina rematerialize, Colville appears, pats Keyleth on the head, and says, "Good job." Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I think there are a few awesome lessons we can learn from episodes like this, but also, I just think the Battle Royales are a ton of fun, and I hope I captured some of that in this video. Our normal Critical Role Demystified schedule resumes next Thursday with episode 32, Against the Tide of Bone. In the meantime, there are a few ways you can support the channel. You can subscribe and ring the bell, that's completely free, but it actually does help the channel a lot. You can join my Discord server. I'd love to continue to make this community more awesome by having you be a part of it. You can follow me on Twitch. I try to go live at least once a week, and you can sign up for my newsletter to get my updates when I've got them. If you've ever struggled with how to rationalize the ridiculous damage dealt out to level 20 characters, check out this video here about hit points in D&D. I think it might be useful. Until next time, play fair and have fun.